The classroom fell silent as I walked in, my heels clicking against the polished floor. 27 pairs of eyes followed me to the front of the room, curious and expectant. I set my leather messenger bag on the desk and took a deep breath before turning to face them. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cassandra Reeves, and I'll be your American literature teacher this semester. I wrote my name on the whiteboard with precise strokes, the marker squeaking slightly. When I turned back around, I caught a glimpse of movement at the classroom door. My heart stuttered in my chest. There he stood, Marcus. My husband. Ex-husband, technically, though the divorce papers were still making their way through the system. He wore the Navy uniform of Westlake Academy's security staff, a plastic badge clipped to his breast pocket. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before he quickly looked away, continuing his patrol down the hallway. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, Marcus had slammed his fist on our kitchen table, his face contorted with anger as he declared, "No wife of mine needs a college degree. It's a waste of time and money we don't have." Now here I was, standing in front of a classroom with a master's degree in English literature, while he patrolled the halls of the very institution where I taught. Life has a peculiar way of coming full circle. I smiled at my students, pushing thoughts of Marcus from my mind. Let's begin with introductions, shall we? The day passed in a blur of syllabi, icebreakers, and first-day jitters. I managed to avoid Marcus between class periods, ducking into the teacher's lounge or lingering in my classroom until the hallways cleared. But as the final bell rang, I knew my luck had run out. I was gathering my materials when a shadow darkened my doorway. Cassie. I tensed at the old nickname. Only Marcus called me that, even after I'd asked him countless times to use my full name. It's Cassandra, I corrected, not looking up from my papers. What do you want, Marcus? He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. The sound made me flinch involuntarily. You didn't tell me you were working here, he said, his voice a mix of accusation and something I couldn't quite place. Surprise? Embarrassment? I wasn't aware I needed your permission. I finally looked up, meeting his gaze. Besides, why would I? We're not exactly on speaking terms. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, still thick and dark, but shorter now than when we were married. The security uniform fit his broad shoulders well. He'd always been physically imposing, a trait that had once made me feel protected. Later, it had made me feel trapped. I've been working here for 2 years, he said. This was my territory first. I laughed, the sound hollow. Your territory? This isn't a prison yard, Marcus. It's a school. His jaw tightened. You know what I mean. There are dozens of schools in this county. Why this one? I closed my messenger bag with deliberate slowness. Because they offered me a position. Because the English department here is excellent. Because I worked hard for my degree, and I deserve to teach at a good school. I slung the bag over my shoulder. I'm not leaving, if that's what you're suggesting. He took a step closer. Cassie. It's Ms. Reeves now. At least while we're at school. I moved toward the door. And you should address me as such in front of the students. His expression darkened. This isn't going to work. It has to, I replied, pausing at the threshold. You made your choices, Marcus. I made mine. Now we both have to live with the consequences. I left him standing in my classroom, staring after me as I walked away, just as I had walked away from our marriage 3 years ago, with nothing but a suitcase and a determination to reclaim the education he had denied me. The faculty parking lot was nearly empty by the time I reached my car. I slid behind the wheel and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel as memories flooded back. We'd been so young when we married, just 20 and 22. I'd been halfway through my sophomore year of college, studying English literature with dreams of becoming a professor someday. Marcus had already been working construction with his father's company, making decent money and imbued with the confidence that comes from physical labor and a paycheck. "You don't need college," he'd told me, not long after the wedding. "It's just going to saddle us with debt. I make enough for both of us." I had argued at first, insisting that my education was important to me. But Marcus had ways of wearing me down, some subtle, some not. The tuition check that mysteriously bounced. The car that was suddenly needed for his work, meaning I couldn't get to campus. The constant remarks about how my studies were taking time away from building our life together. Eventually, I had dropped out, telling myself it was temporary. Just until we were more financially stable. Just until the timing was better. Years passed. The timing was never better. Every time I brought up returning to school, Marcus had a reason why it wasn't practical, wasn't necessary, wasn't what a good wife would prioritize. I started my car and pulled out of the parking lot, thinking about how differently things might have turned out if I'd stood my ground earlier. Would we still be married? Would I have found the courage to leave sooner? Would. A car horn blared, jolting me from my thoughts. I had nearly run a red light. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. "Get it together, Cassandra," I muttered to myself. The past is the past. But with Marcus now a daily fixture in my workplace, I knew the past wasn't going to stay buried for long. My apartment was small but cozy, a one-bedroom unit in a renovated old house near downtown. After leaving Marcus, I had stayed with my best friend Tanya for a few months before finding this place. It wasn't much, but it was mine, filled with books and plants and the quiet satisfaction of independence. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the sofa, reaching for my phone to call Tanya. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright with curiosity. "So? How was your first day, Professor Reeves?" I smiled at the title. Not a professor yet. Just a high school teacher. "For now," Tanya replied. I could picture her grin. "Seriously, how did it go?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain. "The students seem great. The classroom is nice. The faculty I've met so far have been welcoming. But..." I sighed. "Marcus works there." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Marcus? Your Marcus?" "He's not my Marcus anymore," I corrected automatically. "But yes, that Marcus. He's a security guard at Westlake." "Holy shit," Tanya breathed. "Did you know before today?" "No idea. I would have told you if I'd known." "What did he say?" "What did you say? Was it awful?" I gave her the abbreviated version of our encounter, leaving out the way my stomach had knotted at the sight of him, how familiar and foreign he had seemed all at once. "Are you okay?" Tanya asked when I finished. "Do you need me to come over?" "I can bring wine. And that chocolate cake from the bakery you like." I smiled, grateful for her friendship. "I'm okay. Really. Just processing." "This is so messed up," she said. "The guy who basically forbade you from getting an education is now working at the school where you teach. If irony were a person, it would be Marcus freaking Donovan." I laughed despite myself. I know, right? Life has a twisted sense of humor. We chatted a while longer before hanging up. I made myself a simple dinner of pasta and salad, then settled in with a book, a literary analysis of Jane Austen's work that I was considering using for my AP Literature class. But the words swam on the page, my mind drifting back to Marcus. Seeing him had unearthed feelings I thought I'd buried long ago. Not love, that had withered under the weight of his control and my resentment. But something else. Unfinished business, perhaps. Questions left unanswered. Why had he been so adamantly against my education? What was he afraid of? And why, after everything, did he seem so disturbed by my presence at Westlake? I closed the book, knowing I wouldn't get any reading done tonight. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and searched for Marcus on social media. We weren't connected anymore. I'd blocked him after the separation, but his profile was partially public. There wasn't much to see. A few photos of fishing trips with his brothers. A post about a football game. Nothing personal, nothing revealing. Not that I expected to find answers there. With a sigh, I shut the laptop and headed to bed. Tomorrow would be another day of navigating this strange new reality, teaching under the watchful eye of the man who had once tried to clip my wings. The second day at Westlake began with a staff meeting in the library. I arrived early, hoping to avoid an awkward entrance, and chose a seat near the back. Teachers filtered in, most still carrying coffee cups and wearing the slightly dazed expression of educators in the first week of school. Principal Hawkins, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, called the meeting to order. She went through announcements and updates while I tried to focus, but my attention kept drifting to the security personnel stationed around the perimeter of the room. Marcus stood near the main entrance, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning the assembled faculty. His gaze passed over me without lingering, but I knew he was aware of my presence. The tension in his shoulders gave him away. And finally, Principal Hawkins was saying, "I'd like to introduce our newest faculty member, Cassandra Reeves. Ms. Reeves comes to us with excellent credentials and recommendations. She'll be teaching American literature and AP literature." All eyes turned to me. I smiled and gave a small wave, feeling oddly exposed. "We're fortunate to have you with us, Ms. Reeves," Principal Hawkins continued. "Now, everyone, let's make this a great year." As the meeting dispersed, I gathered my things, intending to head straight to my classroom. But Principal Hawkins intercepted me. "Cassandra, do you have a moment?" I nodded, following her to a quiet corner of the library. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "Well, thank you. Everyone's been very welcoming." She smiled. "Good. Your references were exceptional, and your interview impressed us all. I have high hopes for your contribution to our English department." "I appreciate the opportunity," I said sincerely. Principal Hawkins glanced toward the library entrance, where Marcus still stood. "There is one matter we should discuss." Her voice lowered. "I've been made aware that you and Mr. Donovan have a history." My stomach dropped. "Yes. We're separated. Divorcing, actually." "I see." She studied me, her expression neutral. "Will this create any issues I should be concerned about?" I straightened my shoulders. "Absolutely not. I'm a professional, and I'm here to teach. My personal life won't interfere with that." She nodded. "And Mr. Donovan? Can I expect the same from him?" "You'd have to ask him," I replied carefully. "But I don't anticipate any problems." "Good." She paused. "Because I won't tolerate drama, Ms. Reeves. Not among students, and certainly not among staff." Understood. As she walked away, I felt a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. Of course, Marcus had said something to her. He was getting ahead of the situation, making sure his version of events reached her first. I headed to my classroom, my mind buzzing with questions. What exactly had Marcus told Principal Hawkins? How much did she know about our history? And what would happen if... Ms. Reeves? I looked up to find a student hovering in my doorway, a girl with dark hair pulled into a messy bun, oversized glasses perched on her nose. Yes? Can I help you? I'm Emma Chen. I'm in your second period class? I wanted to ask about the extra credit reading list you mentioned yesterday. I pushed aside my personal concerns, focusing on the eager student before me. Of course, Emma. Come in. As we discussed the merits of various American classics, I felt my equilibrium returning. This was why I was here, to teach, to inspire, to share my love of literature. Marcus and our complicated past would not derail that. The rest of the morning passed without incident. I was halfway through my fourth period class, discussing the symbolism in The Great Gatsby, when I noticed Marcus in the hallway outside my classroom. He wasn't looking in, just doing his rounds, but his presence was enough to momentarily throw me off my train of thought. Ms. Reeves? A student's voice pulled me back. You were saying about the green light? I cleared my throat. Yes, the green light. Fitzgerald uses it to represent Gatsby's hopes and dreams. When the lunch bell rang, I stayed in my classroom, grading papers rather than braving the teacher's lounge. But my solitude was short-lived. You're avoiding me. I looked up to find Marcus standing in my doorway, arms crossed over his uniformed chest. I'm working, I corrected, returning my attention to the papers. Some of us take our jobs seriously. He stepped into the room, closing the door partway. I take my job seriously, Cassie. It's Ms. Reeves at school, I reminded him, still not looking up. And I'd appreciate it if you'd leave my door open. Marcus ignored both requests. We need to talk about this situation. What situation, exactly? Us. Working together. It's complicated. I finally set down my pen and met his gaze. It's only complicated if we make it complicated. We're adults. We can be professional. I talked to Hawkins, he said. Told her we were married once. That things ended badly. Is that how you remember it? Things ended badly? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. That's quite the euphemism for what actually happened. His expression hardened. I didn't come here to rehash the past. Then why did you come here, Marcus? What do you want from me? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache with unwanted nostalgia. I don't know. Peace, I guess. Some kind of understanding that we won't let our history interfere with work. That's rich, coming from you, I said. You're the one who came to my classroom yesterday, claiming this was your territory. I was surprised, that's all. I didn't expect to see you here, of all places. Well, now you've had time to adjust to the shock. So can we agree to keep our distance and maintain a professional relationship? He studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. You've changed, Cassie. That tends to happen when you're finally allowed to grow. He flinched at that, a flash of something crossing his face. Guilt? Regret? But it was gone before I could be sure. Fine, he said at last. Professional distance it is. As he turned to leave, I called after him. And it's Ms. Reeves. He paused in the doorway, looking back at me with a slight nod. "Ms. Reeves," he repeated, then disappeared into the hallway. I exhaled slowly, only then realizing how tense I'd been. Seeing Marcus brought back memories I'd worked hard to suppress, the arguments, the manipulation, the slow erosion of my self-worth. But there were other memories too, from before things had gone sour. When his smile had been my favorite sight in the world. When his arms had felt like home. I shook my head, banishing those thoughts. The past was the past. We had both moved on. Now we just needed to figure out how to coexist in this new reality. The rest of the week passed in a blur of lesson plans, student questions, and faculty introductions. Marcus and I maintained our distance, acknowledging each other with brief nods when our paths crossed in the hallways. It wasn't friendly, but it was civil, a fragile détente that I hoped would last. Friday afternoon found me in the English department's small meeting room, collaborating with Derek Hamilton, the department head, on curriculum alignments. Derek was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a passion for classic literature that matched my own. "Your AP Lit syllabus looks excellent," he said, reviewing the document I'd shared. "I particularly like your inclusion of Zora Neale Hurston. She's often overlooked." "Their eyes were watching God changed my perspective on what literature could be," I replied. "I think the students will connect with it." Derek nodded approvingly. "I'm impressed, Cassandra. For someone just starting their teaching career, you have a remarkably developed educational philosophy." "Thank you. I may be new to teaching, but I've been studying literature for most of my life." "It shows." He gathered his papers. "Well, I think we're done here. Any plans for the weekend?" I shrugged. "Just settling in. Unpacking books, mostly." "Ah, the never-ending task of an English teacher," he laughed. "Well, don't work too hard. The school year's a marathon, not a sprint." We walked out together, chatting about a recent literary adaptation I'd seen. As we reached the main hallway, I spotted Marcus at his security station near the front entrance. Our eyes met briefly before I looked away, focusing intently on what Derek was saying. But Derek had noticed the exchange. "Is everything all right?" he asked quietly. "Fine," I assured him. It's complicated." He raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" I hesitated, uncertain how much to share. Derek was my superior, but he also seemed genuinely kind. "Marcus, Mr. Donovan, and I have a history. We were married." "I see." Derek's expression revealed nothing. "And now you're colleagues. That must be challenging." "We're managing," I said, hoping it was true. Derek seemed to weigh his next words carefully. "Cassandra, if this creates any difficulties for you, please let me know. The last thing I want is for your work environment to be uncomfortable." "I appreciate that," I said. "But really, it's fine. Ancient history." He didn't look entirely convinced but didn't press the issue. We parted ways at the parking lot, and I headed to my car, feeling Marcus's eyes on me the entire way. The weekend passed quietly. I finished unpacking the last of my books, treating myself to a nostalgic reread of Pride and Prejudice as I organized my shelves. Tanya came over Saturday night with wine and takeout, and we watched old movies until well past midnight. "So how's it going with Mr. Security Guard?" she asked, refilling our glasses. I shrugged. "We're avoiding each other, mostly. Which is probably for the best." "Has he said anything about the divorce papers?" "Not a word. The papers had been served 3 weeks ago, but Marcus hadn't responded." I'm sure he'll drag it out as long as possible, just to spite me. Tanya sipped her wine thoughtfully. Or maybe he's still holding out hope you'll come back. After everything? I scoffed. Not a chance. I don't know, she mused. The way you describe how he looks at you. Stop right there, I interrupted. Whatever Marcus might feel or think is irrelevant. That chapter of my life is closed. Tanya raised her hands in surrender. Okay. Just saying, unresolved feelings can complicate things. The only feelings I have for Marcus are irritation and occasional pity, I said firmly. Now can we please talk about something else? But that night, after Tanya left, I found myself lying awake, thinking about what she'd said. Did Marcus still have feelings for me? Did I still have feelings for him, buried beneath layers of hurt and resentment? No, I decided. What I felt wasn't love or longing. It was something more complex, the echo of a connection that had once been profound, now distorted by years of pain. Monday morning arrived with a steady downpour, matching my mood as I hurried from the parking lot to the school building, my umbrella doing little to keep me dry in the gusting wind. Marcus was stationed at the metal detector near the main entrance, checking students' bags as they filed in. He looked up as I approached, his eyes tracking my drenched form. "Morning, Ms. Reeves," he said, his voice neutral. "Morning, Mr. Donovan," I replied, equally formal. As I moved past him toward the security check, my heel caught on a wet patch of flooring. I stumbled, nearly falling before a strong hand gripped my elbow, steadying me. Marcus. Our eyes met, close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in his dark irises, a detail I had once loved, now a jolt of unwanted familiarity. "Careful," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "The floors get slippery when it rains." "I'm fine," I said, a bit too quickly, pulling my arm from his grasp. "Thank you." His hand dropped to his side. "Sure." I continued to the check-in, feeling his gaze on my back. The brief contact had unsettled me more than I cared to admit. Marcus's touch, once so comforting, now felt like an intrusion, a reminder of a life I'd left behind. The day proceeded with its usual rhythm of classes, student questions, and paperwork. By lunch, the rain had intensified, drumming against the windows of my classroom as I ate my sandwich and graded quizzes. A knock at my door drew my attention. Derek stood there, a concerned expression on his face. "Cassandra, do you have a moment?" "Of course," I said, setting aside my work. "What's up?" He stepped into the classroom, closing the door behind him. "I just had a rather unexpected conversation with Principal Hawkins." My stomach tightened. "About?" "It seems Mr. Donovan has requested a schedule adjustment that would keep him away from the English department wing during your teaching hours." I blinked, surprised. "He did?" Derek nodded. "Hawkins wanted to know if there had been an incident between you two." "No, nothing like that," I said quickly. "We've been perfectly civil." That's what I told her. Derek sat on the edge of a student desk. "But she's concerned about the dynamics at play here. And frankly, so am I." "There's no need for concern," I assured him. "Marcus and I are both adults. We can handle working in the same building." Derek studied me thoughtfully. "You know, when I was going through my divorce, I couldn't stand to be in the same room as my ex. And we didn't even work together." I sighed. "It's not ideal, but it's manageable." "If you say so." He stood. "Just remember, if you need support, professional or personal, my door is always open." After he left, I sat there, puzzled by Marcus's request. Why would he ask for a schedule adjustment now, when we'd been coexisting without incident for a week? Was it because of our brief interaction this morning? The answer came after school, as I was heading to my car. The rain had finally stopped, leaving puddles reflecting the late afternoon sky. Marcus stood by the faculty parking lot, clearly waiting for someone. For me, I realized as he straightened when he saw me approach. "Cassandra," he called, abandoning the formal Ms. Reeves now that students were gone. I hesitated, then walked over to him. "What do you want, Marcus?" "To explain about the schedule thing. I heard Hawkins talk to Hamilton about it." "News travels fast," I commented dryly. He shifted uncomfortably. "I thought it would be easier for you if I wasn't around as much. Give you some space." "I don't need you to protect me, Marcus. I never did." "I know that," he said, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. "But this morning, when I touched your arm, I saw your face. You looked upset." I was taken aback by his perceptiveness. I was surprised, that's all. It was more than that. He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture again. "Look, I'm trying to do the right thing here." "The right thing would be signing the divorce papers," I pointed out. He flinched. "Is that really what you want, Cassie? To end it for good?" "Don't call me that," I said automatically. "And yes, it's what I want. It has been for 3 years." 3 years, he repeated softly. "Has it really been that long?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of emotions. "The papers are straightforward, Marcus. I'm not asking for anything that isn't already mine." "It's not about the money or the house," he said. "It's about, I don't know. Finality, I guess." "Yes, finality. That's exactly what I want. To close this chapter and move on with my life." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You already have moved on, haven't you? College, career, you did it all without me." "Because you wouldn't let me do it with you," I reminded him. "You made your position very clear." A heavy silence fell between us. In the distance, a school bus started its engine, the rumble breaking the stillness. "I'll sign the papers," Marcus said finally. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours this week." I blinked, surprised by his sudden acquiescence. "Thank you." He nodded, then hesitated before adding, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, Cassandra. For a lot of things." Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, his broad shoulders hunched slightly against the cool afternoon air. I stood there for a moment, watching him go, an unexpected lump forming in my throat. His apology, simple as it was, had caught me off guard. In all our years together, all our arguments and tensions, Marcus had rarely apologized. Not sincerely, not like this. As I drove home, I found myself replaying our conversation, analyzing every word, every nuance. Was his apology genuine? And even if it was, did it change anything? No, I decided. Too much had happened, too much time had passed. An apology couldn't undo years of control and suppression. It couldn't rebuild trust that had been thoroughly broken. But as I pulled into my apartment complex, I couldn't deny the small seed of something that had taken root in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. But perhaps the beginnings of understanding. The next few days passed without incident. True to his word, Marcus had adjusted his security rounds to avoid the English wing during my teaching hours. I caught glimpses of him in the cafeteria or main hallway occasionally, but we maintained our distance, acknowledging each other with brief nods when necessary. Thursday afternoon, I received an email from my lawyer. Marcus had signed the divorce papers. The process was moving forward. After 3 years of limbo, our marriage would soon be officially over. I should have felt relief, even triumph. Instead, I felt a strange hollowness, as if something precious had been lost, which was ridiculous, considering I'd been the one who left, the one who had filed for divorce. I was still staring at the email when Derek poked his head into my classroom. Ready for the faculty meeting? I closed my laptop quickly. Yes, just finishing up. The meeting was being held in the library again, with the usual assortment of teachers and support staff. Marcus was there, standing near the far wall with the other security personnel. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, his expression unreadable. Principal Hawkins went through the agenda efficiently, covering upcoming events and administrative matters. I tried to focus, taking notes when needed, but my mind kept drifting to the email. To Marcus. To endings and beginnings. And finally, Principal Hawkins was saying, "I'd like to remind everyone about the annual Fall Festival next Friday. As usual, we'll need volunteers to staff the various activities." She ran through the list of needs: ticket sales, food service, game booths. I half listened, not particularly interested in spending my Friday evening supervising adolescent revelry. For security, we'll have our regular team led by Mr. Donovan, Principal Hawkins continued. And for the literature-themed scavenger hunt, Ms. Reeves has graciously volunteered to organize. My head snapped up. I'm sorry, what? Principal Hawkins looked at me expectantly. The scavenger hunt. Derek mentioned you'd be taking it on this year. I glanced at Derek, who gave me an apologetic shrug. I thought I mentioned it to you last week. It's a tradition in the English department, the new teacher always organizes the hunt. Right, I said weakly. Of course. Excellent, Principal Hawkins nodded. Please coordinate with Mr. Donovan regarding security for your station. Meeting adjourned. As the faculty dispersed, I cornered Derek. A little warning would have been nice. I'm sorry, he said, genuinely contrite. I could have sworn I told you. But look on the bright side, the students love the scavenger hunt, and it's a great way to incorporate literature into the festival. And I have to coordinate with Marcus? Derek's expression softened with understanding. Just briefly. To make sure your station has adequate security coverage. I sighed, resigning myself to the task. Fine. Any guidance on what this scavenger hunt typically involves? I have the files from previous years, he offered. I'll email them to you. But feel free to put your own spin on it. As Derek walked away, I noticed Marcus still lingering near the library entrance. He seemed to be deliberately avoiding looking in my direction. With a deep breath, I approached him. I guess we need to talk about the scavenger hunt. He looked up, surprise flashing across his face. Right. The scavenger hunt. I'll need to know what kind of security coverage is typical, I said, keeping my tone professional. And any logistical concerns I should be aware of. Marcus nodded, seeming to appreciate my businesslike approach. I can send you the security protocols from last year. Basically, you'll need one security officer assigned to your station for the duration of the event. And will that be you? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He hesitated. I usually handle the main entrance and overall coordination. But I can assign someone specific to your station if you prefer. That won't be necessary, I said quickly. I'm sure whoever you assign will be fine. An awkward silence fell between us. I was about to excuse myself when Marcus spoke again. I signed the papers, he said quietly. My lawyer should have sent them over by now. He did, I confirmed. Thank you. Marcus nodded, his eyes searching mine. So this is really it, huh? After everything? I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to maintain the professional distance we'd established, another part recognized the significance of this moment. Yes, I said finally. It's really it. He seemed about to say something more, but thought better of it. I'll email you those security protocols. Thank you. I turned to leave, then paused. Marcus? Yeah. I appreciate your cooperation. With the divorce, I mean. A sad smile touched his lips. Better late than never, right? As I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The antagonism that had characterized our early encounters at Westlake seemed to be fading, replaced by something I couldn't quite name. Not friendship, certainly. Not forgiveness. But perhaps a tentative truce. That night, I pored over the scavenger hunt files Derek had sent. The hunt had been running for years, with each new English teacher putting their personal stamp on it. Last year's theme had been Shakespeare, with clues hidden around the festival relating to various plays. I decided to focus on American literature, incorporating authors and works from my curriculum. Students would solve literary riddles to find hidden tokens, each representing a classic American novel. It would be educational, engaging, and, most importantly, contained enough to minimize my need to interact with Marcus or his security team. But as I worked on the riddles, my mind kept drifting to our conversation. To the resignation in his eyes when he confirmed signing the divorce papers. To the way he'd said, better late than never. Was he genuinely regretting his past actions? Or was this just another manipulation tactic? The Marcus I had married was skilled at appearing contrite when it served his purposes. Yet something about his demeanor recently seemed different. More subdued. More genuine. Or perhaps that was just wishful thinking on my part, a desire to believe that the man I had once loved wasn't entirely the controlling figure he had become. I closed my laptop with a sigh. It didn't matter. Our marriage was ending. We were colleagues now, nothing more. My focus needed to be on my students, my career, my new life, not on dissecting Marcus's motives or meanings. Friday dawned bright and clear, the perfect autumn day for a school festival. I spent the morning finalizing my scavenger hunt materials, printing riddles and hiding spots for the student volunteers who would help. Classes were shortened to accommodate festival setup, and by early afternoon, the school grounds were transformed. Colorful booths lined the sports fields, each representing a different activity or department. The air filled with the scent of popcorn and cotton candy as vendors set up their carts. My station was positioned near the library entrance, a small tent decorated with book covers and literary quotes. Emma Chen, my enthusiastic sophomore, had volunteered to help, along with a few other students from my classes. "This looks amazing, Ms. Reeves," Emma said, arranging the token boxes. "I love the Hemingway riddle especially." "Thank you, Emma," I smiled, watching her arrange the tokens with a precision that reminded me of myself at her age. "Your enthusiasm for literature is exactly why I became a teacher." As sunset approached, students and parents began arriving, their excited chatter filling the air. I was explaining a particularly challenging Faulkner riddle to a group of seniors when a shadow fell across our table. "Security check-in," Marcus said, his voice professional but his eyes revealing something more complex. "Everything set up to your specifications, Ms. Reeves?" Yes, thank you, I replied, our formality a thin veneer over the history crackling between us. He nodded, scanning our setup with trained eyes. I've assigned Officer Chen to your station, but I'll be making regular rounds. As he walked away, Emma nudged me. Is it just me, or was Mr. Donovan looking at you weird? I busied myself with rearranging clue cards. Focus on the riddles, Emma. The festival unfolded in a kaleidoscope of laughter and activity. My scavenger hunt proved unexpectedly popular, with students racing between stations, clutching riddles and debating literary references. In these moments of academic excitement, I found my purpose crystallized. This was why I'd fought so hard for my education. I was explaining a Fitzgerald reference when Marcus appeared again, this time with a cup of coffee that he wordlessly placed beside me before continuing his rounds. The small gesture, remembering how I took my coffee, black with 1 sugar, struck me with unexpected force. Later, as the festival wound down and the crowds thinned, I found myself alone at my station, packing materials. Footsteps approached, and I knew without looking that it was Marcus. Your hunt was the hit of the festival, he said quietly. The students couldn't stop talking about it. I looked up, finding his expression open, genuine. They're good kids. Hungry for knowledge. Like you always were, he replied, the simple observation heavy with unspoken regrets. Our eyes met in the gentle glow of the festival lights, and for a moment, the years between us compressed. Not erasing our history, but offering a different perspective on it. I never understood what I was taking from you, he admitted, his voice barely audible above the distant music. Not until I saw you teaching today. The confession hung between us, not quite an apology, not quite absolution, but perhaps the beginning of something neither of us had anticipated, understanding.